Before we dive into today's story, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about this channel. We're a community dedicated to respectfully remembering the victims and uncovering the facts behind true crime cases and unsolved disappearances. If you value this approach and want to support respectful storytelling, becoming a subscriber is the best way to never miss an update. If you find our work meaningful, leaving a like helps immensely in bringing these important stories to a wider audience. In the comments, we encourage you to share messages of remembrance for the victims or thoughts on why it is important to keep these cases alive. Let's keep the discussion respectful and focused on the facts. Your support is what allows me to continue this work with the care and dedication it deserves. Now, let's get into the case. The college town of Lafayette, Louisiana, was alive on the warm, humid night of Saturday, May 19, 2012, for 21-year-old Mickey Shunick, a University of Louisiana at Lafayette anthropology student with a bright smile and an adventurous spirit. It was a night spent celebrating a friend's birthday. Mickey was an experienced and confident cyclist who used her black Schwinn bicycle as her primary mode of transportation around the city. After leaving the downtown festivities, she began pedaling the roughly 3-mile route home to her apartment in the St. Street's neighborhood, a journey she had made countless times before. The clock was approaching 2 a.m. on Sunday, May 20. Her last confirmed contact was a text message to a friend sent at 1:47 a.m., stating she was on her way home. She was reportedly seen by a passing motorist near the intersection of St. Landry and Ambassador Caffery Parkway shortly after, still heading in the correct direction. After that, the trail went cold. Mickey Shunick never arrived home. When she failed to show up for a family Mother's Day gathering later that Sunday, her older sister, Charlie, immediately knew something was terribly wrong. Mickey was reliable and close with her family. By Sunday evening, with her phone going straight to voicemail and her apartment empty, Charlie Shunick filed a missing persons report with the Lafayette Police Department. The response from the Lafayette community was swift and overwhelming. Mickey was a well-liked and recognizable figure. Within hours, hundreds of volunteers organized search parties, combing parks, drainage ditches, and the routes she might have taken. Flyers with her photo, often showing her with her distinctive bicycle, blanketed the city. The Lafayette police, led by Sergeant Mark Gautreaux, immediately treated the case as a critical missing persons investigation. They obtained and began scrutinizing security camera footage from businesses along her likely path. The public was asked to check their own private surveillance systems. The first major break came not with Mickey's discovery, but with her bicycle. On Thursday, May 24, 4 days after her disappearance, a crew mowing grass along the shoulder of Interstate 10 near Whiskey Bay, about 35 miles east of Lafayette, spotted a bicycle discarded in the dense undergrowth. It was a black Schwinn, matching the description of Mickey's. The location was chilling, far from her intended route, and thrown from a major highway. The bicycle was processed as a critical piece of evidence. While it showed no immediate signs of blood or a violent struggle, forensic technicians made a crucial observation. The bicycle's front tire was badly bent, and the front fork was damaged. This was not damage consistent with being thrown from a highway. It appeared to be impact damage, as if the bicycle had been struck head-on by a vehicle. This single observation shifted the investigative theory dramatically. Mickey Shunick may not have simply vanished. She may have been the victim of a hit-and-run accident, the driver of which then panicked and disposed of her and her bicycle. This accident theory became a primary focus, directing investigators to look for vehicles with recent front-end damage. However, the complete absence of Mickey's body and the fact that the bicycle was found so far from the scene of any reported accident kept other, more sinister possibilities very much alive. The bent bicycle fork became the first tangible clue in a puzzle that was about to reveal a much darker truth. The discovery of Mickey Shunick's badly damaged bicycle along Interstate 10 fundamentally redirected the Lafayette police investigation. The hit and run theory gained prominence, but detectives kept an open mind. The damage to the bicycle was too specific to ignore. Forensic experts and collision analysts examined the Schwinn in minute detail. Their consensus was clear. The bending of the front fork and wheel was characteristic of a direct head-on impact with the vehicle. This suggested a collision, not an accidental drop or deliberate bludgeoning. The investigation now had a physical signature to search for. A vehicle with corresponding front-end damage, likely a truck or SUV with a high bumper, acquired between the late hours of May 19 and the early morning of May 20, 2012. The Lafayette Police Department launched a public appeal. Unlike any before, they released detailed photographs of the bicycle's damage and asked the community, and indeed the entire state, to report any vehicle, especially white trucks, which were common in the area, with fresh damage to its front right corner. The plea was broadcast on news stations and shared across social media. "Have you seen a truck with damage like this?" The response was massive. Tips flooded in, numbering in the hundreds. Each one had to be vetted, a painstaking process that consumed thousands of investigative hours. Patrol officers were also instructed to be on the lookout for any vehicle matching the description. As this public sieve worked, detectives pursued a parallel, more traditional track. They conducted a forensic download of Mickey Shunick's cell phone records, mapping the locations of its last pings. They conducted exhaustive interviews with everyone who had seen her that night, establishing a tighter timeline. They also delved into the backgrounds of known sex offenders and individuals with violent histories in the area. However, the vehicle angle remained the most promising, public-facing lead. Weeks turned into a month. The community's anxiety deepened. Then, in late June 2012, a tip from a vigilant citizen provided the crucial link. The tipster reported seeing a white Chevrolet Z71 pickup truck with significant damage to its right front headlight assembly and grille in the town of Church Point, Louisiana, shortly after Mickey's disappearance. The truck was registered to 33-year-old Brandon Scott Lavergne, a man with a known criminal record. Detectives immediately began surveillance on Lavergne and his vehicle. On the 3rd of July 2012, investigators observed the white Chevrolet truck. Even from a distance, the damage was apparent and visually consistent with the type that could have been inflicted by striking a bicycle. Lafayette police detectives, now working closely with the FBI, moved to interview Lavergne. He was brought in for questioning. Initially, he provided an alibi for the night of May 19 to 20, claiming he was at home. However, his story contained inconsistencies, and his demeanor raised suspicions. More importantly, a search warrant was obtained for his truck. The forensic examination of Brandon Lavergne's white Z71 was a watershed moment. Crime scene technicians meticulously documented the damage. They then performed a process of comparative analysis, placing Mickey Shunick's damaged bicycle near the truck's front end. The alignment was striking. The height and nature of the damage on the truck's grille and headlight cavity appeared to match the impact points on the bicycle, while definitive physical transfer evidence like specific paint chips was challenging to isolate. The overall physical correlation was compelling enough for investigators. Combined with the suspicious timeline and Lavergne's record, it provided probable cause. On the 5th of July, 2012, Brandon Scott Lavergne was arrested and booked into the Lafayette Parish Correctional Center. He was initially charged with first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping in the death of Mickey Shunick. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community, but the most difficult task, proving what happened after the collision and locating Mickey, still lay ahead. The interrogation room would soon yield answers more horrific than anyone had anticipated. Following his arrest on the 5th of July 2012, Brandon Scott Lavergne found himself in an interrogation room facing detectives from the Lafayette Police Department and the FBI. The evidence against him was mounting. His damaged truck physically matched the bicycle. His alibi was shaky, and his criminal history painted a picture of a violent individual. After initially maintaining his innocence, Lavergne, perhaps realizing the strength of the circumstantial case or seeking some form of negotiation, chose to confess. However, his confession did not just solve one crime, it tore open the wound of another long, unsolved local tragedy. In a detailed statement to investigators, Lavergne admitted to striking Mickey Shunick with his truck on the night of May 19, 2012. He claimed it was an accident, that he was distracted and did not see her cycling. Panicked, he said he loaded her and her bicycle into his truck. He then drove east out of Lafayette. At some point during this drive, he stated that Mickey regained consciousness. A struggle ensued inside the vehicle. Lavergne confessed that he then stabbed Mickey Shunick to death. He drove to a remote wooded area in rural Acadia Parish, where he buried her body in a shallow grave. He disposed of her bicycle along I-10 on his return trip, exactly where it was found. This confession provided the horrific answers the Shunick family and the community had dreaded. But Lavergne was not finished. As part of his discussions with law enforcement, he offered information on another case in exchange for prosecutors taking the death penalty off the table in Mickey's murder. He directed investigators to the 1999 disappearance and murder of Lisa Pate, a 21-year-old Lafayette student whose case had grown cold. Lisa Pate had vanished after leaving a convenience store in August 1999. Her body was found weeks later in a sugarcane field, but her killer had never been identified. Lavergne provided specific non-public details about Lisa Pate's murder that only the killer or investigators would know. He confessed to abducting, raping, and killing her. This revelation was staggering. It meant they had in custody not just the man who killed Mickey Shunick, but a serial offender who had eluded justice for over a decade. Based on this new confession, investigators exhumed Lisa Pate's body for modern forensic testing. While definitive DNA matches were complicated by the condition of the remains, Lavergne's detailed knowledge of the crime scene and the victim's injuries left little doubt about his involvement. Guided by the specifics of Lavergne's confession, law enforcement teams, including the FBI Evidence Response Team, began a grim search in Acadia Parish for Mickey Shunick's remains. Using backhoes and hand tools, they excavated a wooded area near the town of Eunice. On the 3rd of August 2012, after days of searching, they discovered human remains consistent with Mickey's description. Dental records later provided a positive identification. The Shunick family's agonizing wait for recovery was over, though the reality was the worst possible outcome. With 2 confessions on record and physical remains located, the district attorney's office had an exceptionally strong case. Lavergne was formally charged with the first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping of Mickey Shunick. He was also charged with the first-degree murder and aggravated rape of Lisa Pate. The prosecution now faced the decision of whether to seek the death penalty for 2 separate brutal murders committed over a decade apart. With Brandon Lavergne in custody and having confessed to the murders of both Mickey Shunick and Lisa Pate, the judicial process moved forward in Lafayette's 15th Judicial District Court. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mike Harson and Assistant Keith Stutz, faced critical strategic decisions. They possessed overwhelming evidence. Lavergne's detailed confessions, the physical match between his truck and Mickey's bicycle, and the recovery of Mickey's remains based on his directions. They were preparing to seek the death penalty for the murder of Mickey Shunick. a move supported by the Shunick family's public stance. Lavergne's defense team, led by capital defense attorneys Clay Lejeune and Edward Edubach, Faye was tasked with the near-impossible job of defending a client who had confessed on record to 2 horrific murders. Their primary goal shifted from securing an acquittal to avoiding the death penalty. To that end, they engaged in intense negotiations with the district attorney's office throughout late 2012 and into 2013. The negotiations culminated in a plea agreement designed to bring finality and avoid the trauma of 2 separate capital murder trials for the victims' families. The terms were stark. Brandon Lavergne would plead guilty to all charges: first-degree murder and aggravated kidnapping in the death of Mickey Shunick, and first-degree murder and aggravated rape in the death of Lisa Pat. In exchange, the prosecution would withdraw its notice to seek the death penalty for Mickey's murder. Lavergne would receive a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole, probation, or suspension of sentence for each first-degree murder conviction. The sentences would run consecutively. Additionally, he would plead guilty to misdemeanor carnal knowledge of a juvenile in an unrelated 1998 case, for which he received a separate, shorter sentence. The plea and sentencing hearing was held on the 15th of August 2012 for the Lisa Pate case, and on the 11th of January 2013 for the Mickey Shunick case. In court, the details of Lavergne's confessions were formally entered into the record. Members of both the Shunick and Pate families delivered powerful, heartbreaking victim impact statements, describing their profound loss and enduring pain. Mickey's mother, Nancy Rowe, spoke directly of her daughter's stolen future. Lisa Pate's family expressed a bittersweet closure after 13 years of uncertainty. Judge Glennon P. Everett presided over the proceedings. After accepting the guilty pleas, he imposed the agreed-upon sentences: 2 life sentences without parole to be served one after the other, effectively guaranteeing Lavergne would die in prison. In his remarks, Judge Everett noted the heinous, atrocious, and cruel nature of the crimes. Lavergne offered a chance to speak, declined. He was remanded to the Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections, initially sent to the Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola, one of the country's most notorious maximum security facilities. The legal resolution provided a definitive, if not cathartic, end to the cases. It eliminated the risk of a trial verdict being overturned on appeal and spared the families and community the protracted ordeal of capital trials. However, it also left unanswered the deeper questions of motivation and the full sequence of events, as Lavergne's version of an accidental collision was never tested in a trial by jury. The finality was in the punishment, not in a public airing of all the facts. The sentencing of Brandon Lavergne closed the legal chapter on the murders of Mickey Shunick and Lisa Pate. But the reverberations of his crimes continued to shape the Lafayette community and the state of Louisiana. For the Shunick and Pate families, the resolution brought a painful form of closure, ending years of uncertainty, but beginning a lifetime of grief. Mickey's mother, Nancy Rowe, and her sister, Charlie Shunick, channeled their loss into advocacy. They became vocal proponents for victims' rights and played a key role in supporting Mickey's Law, Louisiana Act 164. Legislation passed in 2014 that strengthened penalties for certain violent crimes and improved communication between law enforcement and victims' families. The case also had a profound impact on public awareness and safety culture in Lafayette. Mickey's disappearance triggered an unprecedented community mobilization that set a new standard for public involvement in missing persons cases. The specific evidence-based appeal for a damaged white truck demonstrated the power of targeted public engagement in an investigation. In the years since, the phrase, "see something, say something," has carried added weight in the region, with Mickey's story often cited as a tragic example of how a single tip can break a case. Brandon Lavergne remains incarcerated in the Louisiana state prison system. His location and status are not typically made public for security reasons. He has no possibility of parole. In the years following his plea, there have been no public statements from him, nor any successful appeals of his convictions. His life sentences stand as the final judicial word on his actions. However, certain questions about the night of May 19, 2012 remain subject to discussion, primarily because Lavergne's guilty plea circumvented a full trial where evidence would have been tested under cross-examination. His claim that striking Mickey was an accident was never formally challenged or corroborated in court. Investigators in the prosecution have stated they believe the act was intentional, but the legal process did not require them to prove motive beyond a reasonable doubt once the plea was entered. This leaves a nuanced space between the legal resolution and the full understanding of Lavergne's intent that fateful night. Ultimately, Mickey Shunick is remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived. Memorials, including a dedicated bike rack in downtown Lafayette and annual community rides, honor her vibrant spirit. Her case remains a somber lesson in vigilance, the importance of forensic diligence, and the enduring strength of a community that refused to give up on finding one of its own. The story, while rooted in a specific time and place, echoes a universal truth about the pursuit of justice and the long shadow cast by violence. Today, we gather to remember Mickey Shunick with love and to honor the mark she left on all of our lives. Mickey touched everyone she met with her kindness, her smile, and her vibrant spirit. The pain of losing her is deep, but the memories we shared and the love she gave will always remain with us. We send strength and comfort to her family, her loved ones, and everyone who carries her in their heart. You are not alone. Mickey's memory lives on through the people who loved her and through the light she brought into this world. She will always be remembered, and she will never be forgotten. As we conclude today's story, let's once again remember the lives affected. If you found this exploration meaningful and want to support respectful storytelling about real cases, please consider leaving a like. It helps more than you know. To stay updated with our deep dives into unresolved histories, hit that subscribe button, and in the comments below, feel free to share a thought in memory or why you believe remembering these stories matters. Thank you for watching and for being a part of this thoughtful community.